as maritime archaeologists, we're coming up here to try and understand what this monument means to our history and the history of Hawaii. And at kind of a whole different level, it's something that you can't see from the surface.
These were a series of atolls that people didn't know about or they weren't well charted. So you have a ship trap catching whatever was passing by.
I think that those kinds of sites have a lot that they can tell us about ourselves as humans, as seafarers all over the world.
We're in the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, and it's the extension of the Hawaiian Island archipelago about 1,000 miles north. Kind of figure out a feasible area that looks like it might match up. One of the most amazing things about working in the monument is the fact that you're totally immersed in this environment and in a whole maritime experience of your own. And so as we're out searching for shipwreck sites and then documenting them, we're looking at these artifacts that remind us of what seafaring was like hundreds of years ago.
The Dunottar Castle was lost in 1886. She was sailing with a cargo of coal from Australia for the west coast of America. And in fact, the castle had been known as a fast sailor, and there were some wagers placed with a couple other British ships to see who would arrive first. And so it may have been a case of cutting a corner. It may have been faulty navigation. But anyway, dark night, the first mate was on deck about 2 in the morning. The officers could smell the guano from a nearby island before they could see anything else. And they were just going down below to wake up the captain when the vessel struck the shoal of Kure Atoll.
The Dunottar Castle wreck site is very complicated because it was an iron ship, so a lot of the hull plating is there. Where on a wooden ship, that hull has totally deteriorated and all you see are the metal parts that are left behind. But the Dunottar Castle is a very scattered site, but just filled with many, many things. What makes shipwreck exciting to visit is that there are almost no iron riveted hulls, full rig sailing ships left in the world.
The monument is part of the National Marine Sanctuary Program, and one of the real strengths is that they combine management of these historical resources like the shipwrecks with the natural resources, the coral reefs, the marine mammals. It's a wonderful, pristine environment, and that doesn't mean just shipwrecks or just natural resources. All these things out here are one ecosystem.
What we do as archaeologists when we're working on these remote locations and at these sites is basically to document the data, interpret it, and bring that interpretation back to the people. We're collecting site drawings, video, photography, everything that could tell us a little something about that site, because they are a mystery.
In order to document these shipwreck sites, we have a few different methods, and we often begin with the traditional method, which is baseline trilateration, and that involves setting a baseline down the center of the shipwreck site and then taking measurements off of that baseline to different artifacts so that you're able to create a site map. So we're basically drawing up a scale model of what exists on the seafloor.
The Churchill was loaded with 600 tons of copra, which she brought on board from Tonga, and she ran aground at French frigate Shoals on September 27, 1917. The ship was lodged in the coral and in no apparent danger when a passing sampan from Honolulu happened by. And at that time, the captain and first mate came up out of the Churchill saying, "Thank God you're here. There's a fire on board." Apparently a fire broke out. They were rescued from the ship. The odd thing about the story is that after this event, the crew actually filed affidavits charging the captain with the intentional destruction of an American vessel. And you have to remember the captain was a German national, and it was 1917, First World War, so there may have been some of that being brought into play. But the charges were not substantiated, and he was later released.
The schooner Churchill wreck, which was wrecked in 1917, what's really exciting about that is it's just covered with sailing ship rigging. It also is covered with cargo handling rigging. It handled very heavy cargo, so it's a great timeline of what you can experience and expect to see and learn from the shipwrecks represented in the monument.
Well, the collection of artifacts as a whole is like the telling of a story. So when you have all the pages of the story right there, it's a lot easier to retell. So coming out here and really seeing how things lay on the bottom, seeing how artifacts relate to each other, you can glean a lot of information from that as an archaeologist.
Shipwrecks are considered non-renewable resources, and so it's pretty important that we're out here and we're protecting them and that we understand more, because it's something that it's a part of all of our past and it's a part of all of our heritage.
Last time we found out stuff like this, the thing we saw today.
While at French Frigate Shoals, we decided to investigate an area that was a historic anchorage. We began towboarding in this area, and within the first few minutes of our towboarding session, we discovered a historic anchor. And so when we stopped to investigate the anchor and search around a little more, we discovered what appeared to be an early 19th century shipwreck site.
The whaling wreck that we just found is pretty exciting. Number one, we're the first people to see it. So coming across a new wreck is always probably one of the most exciting things you'll do in your career. But whaling wrecks themselves, and especially these early sites, are pretty intriguing. It's an era that we don't have a ton of material information on, so archaeology can really complement the historical record. When we first came upon the whaling site here on French Frigate Shoals, we just saw the anchor, and the anchor itself indicated that it was a fairly early site, and we didn't see a lot of iron parts scattered about the bottom, and so it was probably a wooden wreck. But it wasn't until we came across the tripods and a huge scatter of bricks that we knew we had a whaling ship for sure. It's one of the best indicators that you have a whaling vessel.
It's always exciting to be able to come up this beautiful location in the atolls, but when you combine that location, the work we're doing with these brand new discoveries, these whaling shipwrecks, this huge worldwide history, it's really exciting. It's seeing these things people haven't seen for well over 100 years.
One way that maritime archaeologists look for sites is to use remote sensing tools like magnetometers, which are able to detect masses of iron. However, with the topography of these coral reefs in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, it's difficult to tow those sensors close enough to the reef crest, so we often splash divers to swim down those crevices and go up little tunnels and channels searching for visual evidence. So we employed that technique for the Gledstain search.
The wreck site I'm most personally excited about is the whaler Gledstains. It was on its way back from New Zealand after whaling in the grounds there, coming up back to Hawaii where it wrecked. The environment that it's laying in is absolutely incredible. So these deep crevices and these cliffs, and in between those little areas is where the artifacts are, the cannon, the tripod, the anchors. It's not easy to find, but the search for it is almost as rewarding as the actual find. And when we do find it there, it's incredible.
The USS Saginaw was a small fourth-rate gunboat, a side-wheel steamer for the Pacific Fleet, the American Navy in the Pacific. The last mission of the Saginaw was actually to come out to Hawaii to support a team of hard-hat diving engineers. The lieutenant commander did something that is actually very responsible. On the way back from Midway, he made the decision to swing by Ocean Island, as Kure Atoll was called then, to see if there were any castaways on the island. And even though they were moving very slow ahead at about 2.5 knots, and lookouts were standing at the bow scanning the dark night, as soon as they saw the breakers, it was actually too late. The ship went right into the coral. The castaways survived on the island for 2 months, using a condenser for distilling water on the beach. That was really what saved them. And also fixing up the Saginaw's small open gig, and finally launched that for the main Hawaiian Islands. Now that was a fairly heroic voyage. By the time that gig got to Kauai, they were so emaciated and starved, 4 of the 5 died in the surf, and only 1 survivor made it, who carried word to the American minister at Honolulu and the king, and the rescue voyage was set off. In the end, everybody was rescued and returned safe and sound.
What I really like about marine archaeology is having a piece of the past to lead you into the story, the wider story that you can tell.
A shipwreck site often consists of dozens of different artifacts, and each of these are important to us because they all have different stories to tell and can give us information about the cargo or where it was coming from, who might have been sailing it. Things like anchors are very diagnostic, and there are other artifacts like ship's bells that can really unlock the identification of a particular shipwreck site.
We have a couple different ways we can share this story of the USS Saginaw. One is to complete the more official and kind of academic report of the archaeological interpretation. But another method is to retrieve some artifacts that help capture that story and focus some of this interest in maritime history for the public. So this year we have permits to recover the bell of the Saginaw, the ship's bell, as well as one of the deep sea sounding leads. One of the very heavy sounding leads they would have been casting into the waters to check the depth as they approached potential navigational hazards.
We don't take artifact recovery lightly. It's something that we treat with a great deal of reverence, and so this was an important way that we wanted to involve the public in what we're doing, what we're seeing, and what we hope to interpret by these artifacts is an experience more than what you can just read and see in pictures.
For maritime archaeologists and historians who have a passion for shipwreck sites and the history that's encapsulated by these kinds of discoveries, we also love the traditions and the lore of seafaring. And one of the great things about getting to come up here to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands is that many of these traditions are continuing.
This is Warship 60, yes sir, agreed to port, inside the channel, inside.
Studying maritime heritage in the monument is very relevant even for today because we need ships just to get here. We are on a large research vessel, the Hi'elakai, no research ship, which has full-time master mariners on board sailing the ship. We have small boat operators. So these skills are still present. There's shipping crossing these waters between the continents all the time.
During this expedition, we're on a voyage of exploration just like they were hundreds of years ago. Navy men, whalers, explorers, Hawaiians, what have you, and be able to repeat that sort of journey for our own purposes, archaeology, all that sort of research. It's really rewarding to be back here.
Looking at these shipwreck sites and these artifacts, we're constantly reminded about how similar experiences out at sea are, whether it's 100 years ago or today on a modern vessel.
The Quartet is an iron steamer on Pearl and Hermes Atoll, and it's a really interesting site. Very dynamic dive site, lots of relief. Some of the huge machinery, the triple expansion steam engine is still sitting upright on the bottom.
This is a Liberty ship, and so Liberty ships really are tied to a specific period in the Pacific, the World War II period, where these things were cranked out to support the whole Navy train, to operate in enemy waters.
You can just tell the power of the sea when you look at it. It's a beautiful, large ship encountered a reef and it's just totally blown apart and destroyed. It's kind of humbling being a ship captain out here in the sea and just understand the power that you're dealing with, and you got to respect Mother Nature.
I wonder, do you wonder where I am? It seems it's been forever since my feet were on dry land, and things are not exactly how I planned. One night of angry weather left me out here on the sand. I was set to sail the ocean, see what there was to see. You said you'd always be my woman and you'd always wait for me. But the gods or fate or something with my plans did not agree, and I was destined for disaster when I headed out to sea. I've always been a sailor, I thought I had it down, but the ocean caught me napping and I damn near almost drowned. It's 3 more weeks before I'll be expected back in town, and I fear my end will come to me before I will be found. I wonder, do you wonder where I am? It seems it's been forever since my feet were on dry land, and things are not exactly how I planned. One night of angry weather left me on this patch of sand.